Turn on the lights. Gotta shed some light on all of my tears. It's too much like right to will and deal with all of my fears. It's looking like rain. I need some peace of mind to brighten my day, like fortune and fame. Just call my name and show me the way. I want to hold you closer. I wanna hold you tight and never let go. But I know the rules, baby. I know the rules, that's why there's no place to go. I wanna leave, you know. I wanna leave. I don't wanna go home, but I can't stay here, searching for words, trying to find the words to make it okay. I know it's absurd. I just don't know what to say, but you listen to me, baby. Don't look at me in that tone of voice. I'm copping a plea. Since I don't have a choice, I know this far true, darling. The punishment should fit the crime, but you do what you got to do, baby. It's not the circumstance, but I'll do the time. I wanna leave, you know. I wanna leave. I don't wanna go home, but I can't stay here.
SLRadio tonight with the great Herman Matthews. We're listening to the first track from his album, Home at Last. Let's let it finish, and then we'll bring Herman on and start having some fun talking about all this stuff. That's why there's no place to go. I wanna leave, you know. I wanna leave. I don't wanna go home, but I can't stay here. I don't wanna go home. I don't wanna go home. I don't wanna go home, but I can't stay here. I don't wanna go home, but I can't stay here. I don't wanna go home, but I can't stay here. I don't wanna go home, I can't stay here. I don't wanna go home, I can't stay here.
wash the dough hit me in the ass as I leave. I told you I didn't want to go home. I just got to get the hell up out of here. You heard me. That's right, baby. Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. That's a good way to start. That's a great tune. Oh, I love that. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I can tell you are. You look great. You really do. You look fantastic.
It's been a long time. It has been a long time. And it always does my heart good when I get a chance to see you or speak to you or even listen to you play. So I'm doing great, and it's wonderful seeing you.
Feelings mutual. Totally feelings mutual, man. And tell me, are you still in L.A.? Is that where you are? L.A. area?
I'm still in L.A., in Northridge, and we're empty nesters now. So my wife and I, we're here dealing with the coronavirus thing, and as she's in the other part of the house and I'm here, we're pretty much tired of each other now. So there you have it.
So much for empty nesting, huh?
Oh my God! Yeah. I love my wife.
I love my wife. I don't even understand the concept empty nest. I built in a permanent full nest in my life, so I don't really know what that's like. But
well, when they said 8 is enough, that was
They made the movie that title for a reason. Yeah, they sure did. So
that's wonderful.
That's a funny way we started. I was talking to Herman before we came on, and I'm like, I'm going to play these cuts and this cut and this cut, and we're going to start with I'm a drummer. We're going to play that, and then you're going to be telling your story a little bit and setting it up, and then I hit go, and it was a different song. But it actually was a wonderful way to start the show. So
there you go.
Any tune off this recording of yours is a great way to start the show.
It was a fun project to do. It did take a while, but only because I was on the road during the time that I was recording this, and I would come home like 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. I'm sorry, 2, 3, 4 days at a time, and then I would go into the studio and try and record as much as I could, and then go back out on the road. And
who were you traveling with?
And then also too, at the time, what was this, in 05, 6, 7, 06 or so, I was out with Tom Jones.
Okay. And
Tom loved to work. So, I think we had the month of September off, and then the rest of it was, we're on the road. And
I saw you twice with Tom. Remember that at the MGM Grand, 2 nights in a row.
Oh yeah, there you go.
That was great. You did like 7, 8 years with him, something like that. Quite a while, weren't you with him a while?
I was there for about 7.5 years, which I couldn't have asked for more than that. That was wonderful. It was great. I mean, they have that kind of security for a while.
Yeah, and he was cool to work with, a fun guy to perform with.
Yeah, he was great to work with. He was a drummer.
Oh, really?
So that was really, a kick in the head, because we would sit down and talk about that. And even the very first night I worked with him, I met him 10 minutes before going on stage, and we were in Atlantic City. And so we go out, we play the first tune, and he's right in front of me, and he's singing, but he keeps looking over his shoulder, like looking back at me. So I'm wondering what's wrong, So the next song, he does the same thing, he keeps looking over his shoulder. And I'm like, going on. So I'm thinking I've lost the gig, but on the first night, I've lost the gig.
I bet he's digging it. He's going, why didn't I hire this guy sooner?
After the second song, he comes up to me and says, I love your foot. Your foot. I love your foot. Because, I was right on the riser and it was hitting him right in the back. So
I bet he loved that.
It worked out well.
Well, it worked out well. That's the sign of the kind of front man you want to work with, that enjoys the pocket like that. That's cool that he was a drummer. I didn't know that about him.
Definitely. He told me that he was a drummer, and then when he started, the more syncopated things came out, and one of those drummers was David Garibaldi. When he started hearing that, he just couldn't sing and play at the same time. So he just went up in front and grabbed the microphone and left the drums alone.
He's like, I'm either going to go this way or that way, but this is where these two parts of me part company, right?
Exactly.
Well, and you mentioned Dave Garibaldi. I know that you played with Tower too, Tower Power for.
Yeah.
And when you joined that band, was it I don't know what was going on at the time. I know Dave had been, the staple guy with that band. Had he stepped away from the gig, or did he have other? What was going on at the time when you came into it?
David hadn't been in the drummer's chair on that gig for a whole lot of years.
Really?
I mean, yeah, I came in right after Russ McKinnon, and I think there were 5 drummers. Before that even, Garibaldi, I think what it was for him, the band stopped being what he thought the band should be. And between all the drugs and the drinking and all of that, he stepped back from it. And so he hadn't been a part of that. Now, they stayed in touch, Emilio and Dave. They stayed in touch, but it just it wasn't working for him.
Really?
And when I was there for about 4.5 years, and I had decided to move on, but I really didn't know how to find a replacement, or should they go through auditions? All this I'm thinking to myself. We were playing the Fillmore West in San Francisco. And David was there. And so I went up to David and I said, yeah, I came to the show. And so I asked David, I said, man, would you be interested in possibly doing some subbing or because I'm, and he was very positive about it. And he said, yeah,
cool.
So after the show, I just went up to him and said, would you be interested in coming back? And he said, well, you know what, let's talk. Because I was really seriously going to move on. So when we were in Europe, I went up to Emilio and said, we have to talk. And it took maybe a week or so before we really sat down and had the conversation. But I said, you know what, I'm going to have to give you my 2 weeks notice. And he was shocked and a little disappointed and a little upset and he understood.
Yeah.
But then when I told him but David Garibaldi's interested in coming back, then he forgot all about me.
Oh. What is that old thing about if you're going to send a sub, you send someone better than you? Is that the thing? I don't know.
Yeah, that's what they say. Well, that's one of the reasons why, before this whole coronavirus thing came about, I would ask the drummer, I say, hey guys, if you need a sub for anything, let me know. And they looked at me and said, I'm not going to sub my gig out to you.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not going to sub my gig. I'm going to sub my gig to you, and I won't get my gig back. Is what's going to happen.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
Well, I tell you, I heard you one time with Tower Power, and when you were in Massachusetts somewhere. I was living in Boston. I don't know if you remember that, but you came through somewhere up there. And I came out to hear you, and it was terrific. You just, that band needs a certain kind of drummer, and you really brought a beautiful thing to it. And not everybody can do that kind of gig,
Well, and you're right, because the downside of that, everyone loves Garibaldi and loves the parts that he brought to those songs. I'm included with that. I mean, I couldn't think of, those things, those incredible things that he created. And so the downside is that when you're playing the part, there's always one or two people out there in the audience saying, "Who's this guy think he who's this guy trying to sound like David Garibaldi? And I was like, I wasn't trying to sound like him. I was just trying to honor the part.
Yeah, right.
So
yeah,
I don't think anyone can sound like Dave Garibaldi.
I mean, Dave or Gad or Jordan, these Caro, these guys created certain kinds of, lasting atmospheres in the way they would approach a tune. And some of those recordings, if you're playing those tunes, or maybe even if you were playing with those bands that they were famous in, then you kind of have to honor that, don't you? Or it's like people won't know what they're missing, but they're missing something, and it doesn't sound right to them.
Well, it's like if you're playing with Paul Simon and he calls 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. How else are you going to play it?
Exactly.
You play that. You play it. You're not trying to be like Gad,
no,
but you have to play the part.
Yeah, that is a definitive and completely significant part of that tune's identity, is that beat. Of course.
The greatest drum cadence in pop music. Come on. Come on.
Isn't that the truth? Hey, let's play. There's a lot to talk about, but we want to hear music too. And there's.
Okay, sure.
I want to play the one we were going to start with, so we can talk a little bit more about you and when we met and where you come from. In Texas here. So this is another cut from Herman's CD, "Home at Last," which you can hear on all of your favorite cloud services for far less than Herman should be getting from you. But Oh, and speaking of that, look in the description of the post here, and you will see a link to Herman's PayPal virtual tip bucket. And when I have full-time musicians come on this show, we need to make that possible for people to express some love to you guys, because this is some trying times we're all going through, and some people are suffering more than others. Everybody's suffering in some way. But those folks who make their living as entertainers and bring these beautiful experiences into our lives and are shut out of that life right now, they need our support. So anything anybody can do to send some love Herman's way, we appreciate it. So that link is in the description in the post there. And while this tune's playing, I'll look and I'll see exactly what that link is, and I'll speak it out loud next time I mention it. So here's Herman doing his tune, "I Am a Drummer from Texas." Or did that just end? No, that was the end of the last one. Here we go.
I am a drummer from Texas. Hear my groove. Like a tree planted by the rivers of water, I shall not be moved. I am a drummer from Texas. Hear my groove. My groove. A strong foundation that has shaken walls, conquered souls, and moved feet since the dawn of man. It is life you feel, bursting with every crack of the snare and thump of the bass drum. I am a drummer from Texas. Hear my groove. Swinging, shuffling, rocking and rolling with soul, thirsting for the real, using space as a measurement for time. I am a drummer from Texas. No, I am just a drummer from Texas. Feel my groove. Loping, humping, bumping, grinding, huckabucking, and paving the way, yet living for those moments, those magical moments that are few and far between. Hear my groove. Feel my groove. Grooves that are like jewels with every passage a blessing. I am a drummer from Texas. The drummer from Texas. Lucky, fortunate, and blessed. Excuse me. Blessed. Sitting, leaning, and hanging from the bottom of the beat like juice-filled melons just ripe for the picking. I am a drummer from Texas. Listen to the dance. The dance. Listen to the dance. A sanctified motion rejoicing the feelings of old. Stomping, kicking, shouting, losing control. Joyously, drunkenly, serenely losing control. I am a drummer from Texas. Here, my room.
Nice. Oh, man.
Hey,
Well, I can never stop this stuff before it starts playing another tune. I don't know what's up with that.
I tried to get James Earl Jones to do that.
Oh, did you really? Oh, would that have been cool? Tell me who we did. We need to say who recorded on this album with you.
Okay. You know what? It was co-produced by Ned Albright, who is a great vocalist, a great keyboardist. Used to play with the Archies back in the day. So, you know, when you hear sugar, boom, boom, beep, boom, 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 that's Ned.
Honey. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Boom,
Okay.
boom, beep, boom, boom. Yeah, that's Ned. And also, too, he played keyboard bass on Montego Bay, if you remember that song.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa. But, okay. So he co-produced and was a producer that I worked for and did a lot of records for with a lot of artists.
Okay.
But on that song, I Am a Drummer from Texas, that was the great Kevin Ricard on percussion, who, you know, you would see many seasons on American Idol playing with the Ricky Minor band.
Okay.
So and also too, I played with him when I was with Kenny Loggins.
Okay.
And then who else? Me on drums, of course. And then there's the background vocals who we call the Hermanators. And Gia Shamboni, Kim Yarbrough, Ned Albright, and myself. And all of that Swahili-like stuff that we were doing were just words that I made up one night on the back of the bus.
Oh, really?
That it just sounded like it would go cool with the song, you know.
Sounds great.
So,
it feels good. It feels like, you know, dancing around a roaring fire, man, and just celebrating life, you know.
Yeah.
The album features a lot of people that you've worked with over the years. Is that right? Is that?
Yeah. A lot of favors were called in, and then, you know, in turn, you know, they did me a favor, I did them a favor. Sure. And I had the likes of Dr. John Shambodi, God rest his soul, on bass, who used to play with Clover and played with Lucinda Williams and with one of the greatest chiropractors in the world. He played bass. Leland Sklar played bass on the record. Doug Pettibone, Dean Parks on guitar. Who else? Everett Harp, Lee Thornburg on horns, and I had Ivan Neville.
Wow.
Played keyboards on a couple of tunes, and had Charlie Drayton play bass on some tunes. It's just a hodgepodge of musicians, of my favorite musicians. Yeah. And they played on the record.
A celebration, you know.
And also, and I can't forget this too. I'm sorry. And I had the incredible, lovely, my homegirl, I work in her band, Teresa James. She sang on this record on one of my favorite cuts, which is called Hold On You.
All right.
So she, yeah.
Well, we'll have to play that
she
cut
sang
too.
on
Then we'll have to play that cut.
Indeed. Come on now.
It's a great sounding record, and you know, listening to the crafting of the tunes and listening to you and the bass player and the drummer and percussionist working together. You know, I mean, you and I have talked about this stuff back when we were young and we first met, but there's this, that part of what drew us together was a common love for, you know, great grooves and the art of the groove, right? And when to play, when not to play, you know, that's a big part of it. I think this recording is such a beautiful example of that in you. And man, the drum sound is killing. You know, we could do a whole show just about how you got the drums to sound so good. You know.
Well, you know, one DW drums, you know, for me, very easy to tune a room to, and then Gardner Knight was the engineer who, you know, my buddy today, and we're on radio. Can I say certain things here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, you know, I always call him Gardner Bad Motherfucking Knight.
Yeah, there you go.
And the reason being, he knew how to place the drums where they were up in the mix, but they weren't masking everything. They weren't covering everything, but you can hear them.
Yeah.
You know, there are some mixes on some records, and I want to say from, well, certain parts of the country where the drums are so compressed. You can't hear everything. You can't hear the tone of the drum.
Right.
And Gardner, being from the East Coast, he wasn't afraid to push the snare up.
I love that, man. I hate it too when you work really hard on the track and stuff gets buried and you're just kind of going, that does not represent what was going on in my head or in that room.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. Well, that's the reason why Steve Jordan became a producer. Because he sat back and said, I can do a better job than this. You know, I can engineer this better than what I'm hearing. So, I don't know. People just tend to think that drums are loud. And so they just tuck them way, way back.
Yeah. And, you know, there is a way for them to be up in the mix if the drummer plays in a way to still leave space for people. Right. I mean, that's a big part of it. I think about those, you and I were talking about Jim Keltner when we were rapping before we decided to do this, and how much we both love him. And you know those Mark Cohn records, his playing on that second one, Rainy Season. That's some of my favorite work that he's done on record. And the drums are the way they're recorded, same kind of thing that we were just hearing from you. And they're way up in the mix, but but he plays in a way where it doesn't get in anybody's way. It's beautiful. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. And then Keltner being the master that he is. So, you know, it's amazing.
Yeah. Do you know him?
You know, it's kind of funny. I played on a couple of records with him where he is playing half the record and I'm playing the other half of the record. My only contact with him, back in the day, when drumstick companies or drum companies, or when companies, period, they would just kind of give you their phone number. So I asked ProMark for Keltner's phone number, and they gave it to me. And so every year, once a year, I would just call him up and, you know, talk to his machine and say, you know, Mr. Keltner, I just heard you on the Little Village record, or I just heard you on the radio. And I just want to say, you know, thank you so much for your talent and for what you do. You know, it is an inspiration. You know, a happy new year to you. And, you know, thank you very much. And that would be it. So I did that a couple of years in a row. And I think the third year, I'm doing the same thing, you know, Mr. Keltner. Yeah. And then he picks up the phone. He picks up the phone. He's answering it. And I'm like, oh, my God, you know. I said, this is Herman Matthews. You don't know who I am. He's like, of course I know who you are, Herman. How you doing? And he starts naming the stuff that I played on. And so he says, you know what? I'm walking out the door. I really don't have much time, but just thank you for the phone calls. Now, after that, we were on the phone for about 45 minutes. And we're we're just talking. We're talking drums. We're talking, and then we started talking about Jeff Porcaro because this was soon after he had passed away, and Jeff Porcaro was like a son to Keltner.
Was he really?
And yeah, and then it kind of got dark there for a moment, and we were both crying on the phone, So, but then I finally did get a chance to shake his hand on a Timothy B. Schmidt at a Timothy B. Schmidt party, and those are the records that he would play on half and I would play on half, and I got a chance to really just sit down and break bread with him, and we talk shit.
That is so cool. That is so cool, and as it should be. You should be chatting with him because I would think he would appreciate your playing as much as you appreciate him. The record that you turned me on to, the Timothy B. Schmidt, at least this one tune, "The Good Fight," is that one of those records?
Yeah, that's yes. That record is not actually finished as of yet. That song is, and I think we have about 6 or 7 songs in the can. I think Keltner did play on a couple of songs, and I played on the rest. The record before that, he played on half, and I played on half. But Timothy, he's been doing solo stuff or doing records for a lot of years, but he never gets the chance to go out and promote them because he's always working with that other band that he's with, the Eagles.
Exactly.
So
and
so they're pretty busy year round and making all the money in the world, and but he always calls and says we're going to go out soon, and he still wants to do it.
Oh, that's cool.
From
That's
his
cool.
mouth to God's ears.
Well, we could play that cut if you want. That's a great cut.
Sure. He
go ahead.
He did this one. I think he asked a handful of young ladies or his favorite singers to sing on this, and scheduling just wouldn't permit. And when he got to Sheryl Crow, she said sure. And so this song. It's a bit on the political side of things, but and when I was reading the comments in the
on the YouTube,
there's a handful of comments where people just they don't want their artists or their entertainers to
have
speak
opinions.
Politically.
Yeah.
And so I mean I kind of go back and forth on that, depending on if I agree with them or not. So I guess I do understand it, but knowing Timothy and knowing where his heart is, he doesn't want to hurt anyone, but because he is that gentle soul, he is that gentle eagle. He sings all the pretty songs.
Oh yeah. I don't have a problem with people expressing whatever they want to express in their tune, because there are different layers to a piece of music as you dig it, right? And
of course,
there's the part that transcends all that, and then there's maybe it can be used as a platform where the artist wants to express something. It's his or her piece of music. They ought to be able to do what they want, and we ought to be able to kind of take that in or not. If we do, fine. If we don't, fine. But there's no reason why we can't dig the heck out of the tune. And
there you go.
I mean, for some of us who, for myself, over my life, I've migrated my opinion on a path around different things. I might have thought more one way when I was much younger, and I think differently now. And there were songs that I loved growing up that if I really took the lyrics apart when I was a more, I don't know how to say it other than say when I was a more conservative thinker, maybe I would be more like, I don't know if I agree with that, but I still love this song, Right. And then now, all these years later, I'm like, I love the lyrics and the song,
Right.
But,
right.
But it's a shame when people get too caught up in that, because it's kind of like they're I don't know, they're getting too worried about the crust around the bread, and they're just forgetting everything else that's in the middle,
Yeah.
But but maybe if they, just give it a chance, they'll still be able to not only appreciate the music fully, but who knows, it might even open them up to considering some of what that person's trying to say and realize that's a beautiful thing, just the ability to listen to each other and to not react, but just to reflect, you know?
It always reminds me of something that I remember thinking to myself as I was playing with someone who was a total opposite, the opposite of my opinion about a lot of things. And so my retort to a lot of this stuff was that I don't have to like your music to play it, So, I don't have to like your music to take your money. So let's go, just go ahead and let's count it off.
Yeah.
And let's have a good time with it,
Yeah, I like that. Just count it off. If they're monologuing too much, it's like, just give me a downbeat, damn it. Just give me the downbeat.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's play that Timothy Schmidt tune. Timothy B. Schmidt, The Good Fight, and Sheryl Crow's on this one, right?
Indeed, yes.
Now, we'll find out, since I'm playing it off YouTube, we'll find out if there's a commercial before the song comes on. And let's find, maybe I'll keep the volume down until I see that it's not a commercial. Let's see. It's not a commercial. Here we go.
So think before you talk. Matters what we do. Gotta keep your head to get the message through. Lead from the left. Gotta do what's right. It's getting harder every day to put up a good fight. Spread the word, tell everyone you So think before you talk. Matters what we do. Gotta keep your head to get the message through. Lead from the left, gotta do what's right. It's getting harder every day to put up a good fight.
You know, Herman, it's really interesting to hear Timothy sing over this kind of tune. Like you said, we're not used to this sound from him at all, are we? You know?
Not at all.
It's very cool. Who else was on this, by the way?
Mike Finnegan on keyboards. Mike Finnegan. I don't know who's on guitar.
Now let's let him play then. Yeah, great cut.
I think the guitarist is who's playing with Janet Jackson right now. I think, but all of his parts are already there by the time I came in and played.
Where did you where you were tracking for that in L.A.?
Over at Timothy's studio in Calabasas, and
Nice.
he had the way he performs. He had already laid down the bass and did it to a drum machine, and so I just came in, and it was fairly easy. You give me a couple of pointers here and there, and boom, there you go.
Nice work,
And then,
man.
And in the bridge, I'm doing a little vocal percussion,
Yeah.
So.
Well, see, they know when they hire you, they get more than just drums, right? They can
Right.
percussion, commentary, vocalist, writer, cook, peanut brittle maker.
Yeah. Actually, when I was playing that song, when I cut it, I was thinking of you. Actually, didn't you used to play like was it a Green Pearl set?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a song that you used to play with Passenger that we used to hear, and I can't think of it now. But it was just meat and potatoes, man. It was great, and so I was trying to do my best Cotton Danningham.
Well, now you're just being too sweet. Yeah. That's cool.
Listen to
we should when we played I'm a Drummer from Texas, and I said we were going to talk about where that comes from, where you come from, and there's of course too much to tell in the span of one chat like this, but I know when I met you, I think it was 83 maybe, was that about the time? 83, 84?
Possibly so.
When you were playing with Paul English and Dwight Sills was in the band, and who was playing bass in that band? Do you remember?
I want to say it was Robinson.
I can't remember.
He was the principal bassist for the Houston Symphony.
Mm.
He played upright. He played great upright. Played great jazz. Didn't know how to pop. Yeah. And so literally in one afternoon, we gave him some we gave him some Rolls Royce records, and we gave him we gave him like a half a dozen records. And the next day he came in and he was popping as if he was Larry Grant.
Wow.
It was amazing.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, so I know that you guys came to Austin around that time.
Yeah.
Passenger had dissolved, and Mitch and Paul Ostermeyer and Steve Zirkle and I had constituted this new quartet called the Mitch Watkins Group, right? And we were working up new tunes, and we were actually playing. Some of us were playing with Tomas Ramirez around that time. Steve and Mitch and I and Doug Hall and Arturo Garza, and I think we were on 6th Street, and you guys were playing at the new jazz club on 6th Street. I think you were kind of doing a house thing there. Yeah, right.
Yeah, Baxter's.
And that's how we met each other, literally on the street playing, right?
You know what? And I got to say, during that time, everyone talks about Austin being a music town. You know what? Back then, it was truly a music town.
Wasn't it though?
It wasn't so much like a touristy kind of thing, but you can go up and down that street and hear world-class music and just be blown away. Whether you be at Steamboat Springs or 6th Street Live or Baxter's, it was. Yeah. You would hear people who. It was just amazing.
It was, wasn't it? It was a special time. When Passenger, when Mitch and Roscoe Beck and Paul Ostermeyer and Steve Metter were on the other night, and Jennifer Warnes joined. They spent most of the hour and a half just talking about the 70s and the early 80s in Austin and what that time was like. And we came in kind of at the end of it, you and I, but we got to taste some of it, and it was amazing. It really was.
Yes, we did.
And then we started hanging and talking about the drummers we loved and what we loved about them, and that was really fun, wasn't it? That was
tried to be like them.
Yeah, that was a great kinship, running into you at that time. That meant a whole lot to me, and I know to you too. And I was thinking right after that, you went to L.A. What time? When did you move to L.A.? When did that happen?
I moved to L.A. Right when the oil dropped out of Texas, or when all the businesses kind of went crazy.
The savings and loan crisis.
About 1988.
Okay.
Or so, So that's when I literally, the band that I was playing in with Dwight Seals, and by that time we had turned into sort of a hip top 40 band, and I'd say top 40. We're playing songs, danceable tunes, playing Prince tunes, Janet Jackson tunes, but also playing music from Europe and playing, Peter Gabriel and Living in a Box, Nick Kershaw, that kind of stuff. Um, we went from working, 6, 7 nights a week and packing a place to working an hour out of Houston at a Holiday Inn where we were playing to 4 or 5 people.
Mm.
And after about a month of that, I decided driving home that I was going to move to LA. And then 3 days after that, I got a phone call from Kirk Whalum saying, "Hey man, look here, I want you to be in my band. The only thing is you have to move to LA."
Good timing, Kirk.
I know. I said, "Okay, sure, let's do it." So
Kirk, I could feel your vibes. It was already communicated to me.
I was pretty lucky. Yeah.
That is cool. And then Dwight was around that time too, wasn't he, or was he a little later?
It's just a little later. I mean, of course, I'm thinking, I'm going to move to LA, and I was the only one at that time, going to move to LA. But then Everett Harp said, "Hey, man, I'll drive out there with you." And then literally about 3 months later, Dwight says, "I'm coming to LA." And then the bass player that was in the band, he's like, "I'm going to move to LA too." And so everybody kind of sort of moved to LA within 3 months of each other.
I'm thinking about what a great bunch of players coming out of Houston at that time.
Yeah.
You, Dwight, Everett, and Kirk, of course.
Bruce
Kirk,
Bruce Atkinson, and it was just some musicians who were not necessarily trying to be the best bass players or best guitarists or best drummers they can be, but being the best musicians that they can be. So they graced LA with their presence.
Oh boy!
And went on to do some incredible things.
Are any of those guys still out there, or are you the only one that is still in LA?
Bruce Atkinson is still here. I know Dwight Sills, I think, moved back to Texas, and he picks up the guitar when he wants to pick up the guitar now. Kind of on his own terms.
Yeah.
Still playing his ass off.
Such a great player. Oh man.
But I think I'm the only one that's still trying to pound it out, and playing these little gigs here and there, and looking for the next big touring gig.
Well, man, drummers, we're in the engine room, right? If we stop, the whole thing just collapses, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Man, and that was always very true about you. That you can do whatever you want to do, but you're always committed to doing what needs to be done to keep the skeleton solid in a song. That's a beautiful thing, man. I think that's what you share with Keltner and with Jeff Porcaro, who we were talking about, and all those guys.
Well, God bless. Yeah. Just trying to have a good time with it all too.
Well, speaking of good times, Herman does have he's got a funny bone too, and he's a jokester too, and that's another thing that you and I shared at the time is when I began writing. I don't know if you remember that, but I began writing some really silly songs and recording them, and
great stuff.
I'm on the sillier side. Herman's on the cuter, funny side with some of his writing. At least the one that I'm gonna play you, "Cup of Sugar," which is he doesn't miss anything of what he typically brings to a song in terms of soul and groove, but hearing him talk about this subject in this song is a lot of fun. Do you want to set this tune up?
Well, you know what? It's so funny. This one was co-written by Ned Albright, and literally this is one of those songs. I came there. I had a drum groove and I had a hook, and that was really it. And even the drum groove itself was me talking on like recording into a handheld device, just playing. And, you know, we kind of sort of made things or grooved it around that. And it became Cup of Sugar. And it kind of took a turn, a couple of turns here and there, because, you know, originally we were saying, oh man, this would be great for Sesame Street, or it'd be great for, some commercials and all. And as it started taking turns, we're saying, we can't say that on any of those shows,
Right.
you know. So
Yeah.
But anyways.
Oh, and I love it. I love the tune. I love the sentiment of it. Did you you were kind of brainstorming it in the studio, and then you just went home and wrote the lyrics, or did you come up with the lyrics on the spot?
Well, you know, like I had a chorus lyric, and then Ned came up with the verse stuff.
Okay.
You know. So,
okay. Yeah.
So that's
it's good
what
stuff.
there.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the one of those tunes that I wrote, "Moose in My House," that so much airplay. That was another one that Radio Oz. I don't know if you remember, there was a kids radio network called Radio Oz for a while, and they called me up and they said, we want to play "Moose in My House" on Radio Oz, but you need to get the reference to beer out of this song. You got to recut it and replace those lyrics with something else. And I racked my brain, and it's like the song would not yield. It just would not be. It had to be beer, and so the tune never got played on Radio Oz.
Right, I understand.
So, you know, you have these visions, but then the tune just writes itself sometimes, right?
Right, of course.
Let's listen to "Cup of Sugar," and let's see if I can play the right tune. Let's see if this works. Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Now I'm a man who loves his pie. All kinds of flavors will satisfy. A juicy berry served up hot. Now that's a flavor that hits the spot. And don't forget a little whipped cream. So good, you know what I mean. It takes a cup of sugar to make my favorite pie. A cup of sugar, so turn your oven up high. Listen, I searched for years to find the best. I gave each pie my own taste test. I like so many, it's hard to choose. Pecan and apple and cherry too. But then one day I finally found the best darn pie around. It takes a cup of sugar to make my favorite pie. A cup of sugar, so turn your oven up high. Yes, I really want some. Everybody wants some. I really, really want some. I really, really want to have some pie with you. The girl that made that special pie is now the apple of my eye. Our beautiful child is running around. So let me tell you what I have found. What's most important is not the pie. It's the one who bakes it. It takes a cup of sugar to make my favorite pie. A cup of sugar, so turn your oven up high. It takes a cup of sugar to make my favorite pie. A cup of sugar, so turn your oven up high. That's what I'm talking about.
All right. Let me get you unmuted here. Wait on a second. I got to get my other hand out of my other pocket. That is a great tune.
There you go.
That's a great tune.
It's fun. It was fun.
So I've got a friend Michael O'Connell. I used to work with Michael when I first joined IBM 20-something years ago, and
Right.
he lives in Indiana now, I think. But Michael is listening, and he said, two bald, headphone-donning bobbleheads. Yeah, I'm watching, like the delayed visual of what's going on. It's like, I don't know if you feel this way, but a lot of musicians can listen to their bands and they just sit there, and I just can never sit there. It's my body, my head is moving, and it's
Right.
Elizabeth, she's pretty good that way too, but she'll be like, calm down. So that's enough of that.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
That's a
No,
great tune.
if it moves you, move.
I love the bass playing on that tune. Who is that?
That's Leland
Is
Sklar.
that Leland?
I just did I did a Zoom with him and an interview with this young lady named Kat Beach, and we both played on her record. And she was doing this deal on YouTube, pretty much like what we're doing now. And just hearing the stories from Leland, I mean, talk about a guy who's been around.
Oh man!
And talk about, I mean, he's done everything, played with all of my favorite artists, and and he's still that guy who, I mean, you can call him for a session and he'll be there.
Wow.
He's that guy, So he's playing bass on that. Matter of fact, my favorite players on that. Ned Albright, Doug Pettibone, and the Kevin Carr. I couldn't have asked better musicians. They knocked the park.
I lost some of your. Let me give it a second. Let's see if it settles down. The connection got a little weird for a second. I missed a little bit of what you just said. There you go. I think you're back now. Yeah. Can you hear me?
I just said, yeah, I can hear you. I just said I couldn't have asked for better musicians to play that song.
Oh, and you were talking about Leland. He's played with so many people. He's one of the most iconic bass players in all of pop and rock, and not just because of the way he plays, but also because of the way he looks and everything. That great white beard.
He has a great look, and he is one of the funniest. One of the funniest individuals, can tell a great story. And once again, he's been there. He's done that. So I love him.
How old is Leland, you think?
I really,
ballpark.
Maybe 10 years older than us.
When you have a beard like that, from the first time I ever saw him play, it's always, you think of him as timeless, like he's Father Time that's just grooving, right?
And that's what he is.
Yeah, really is, isn't he? Yeah, and just the little things on that tune he does, the little slides at the end of phrases and stuff. Just the tone, it's just killing. It's great stuff.
Oh yeah.
So I noticed looking at because I didn't know everybody you played with, and of course I knew about Kenny. And so after you moved to L.A. and Kenny Loggins, so you were working with Kirk. How did the Kenny Loggins thing happen? How did you hook up with that gig? That was your introduction.
Well, wow, let's see. Okay. So Kirk Whalum is doing his session with George Duke. And George Duke walks in. No. It's George Duke and Freddie Washington. And Freddie Washington walks into the room and says, hey, do you guys know any drummers who can play rock and roll, R&B, folk, country, can play all of that stuff equally as well? So, of course, George Duke starts naming, Benny, Ndugu, and all of his drummers. And Kirk Whalum just kind of said, what about Herman Matthews? He's my drummer. And Freddie Washington said, oh, yeah, I just saw Herman play with Bob James at the Universal Amphitheater. And he said, you think you'd be interested in the Kenny Loggins gig? Or to audition for it? And of course, Kirk said, sure, and gave him my number.
Wow, that's nice.
So now dig this. So I'm, with Everett Harp and his wife and I don't know who else we had over, but we're playing Pictionary the next evening, and we're doing all that, and my phone rings, and I'm thinking I'm just going to let the machine get it.
Mm-hmm.
And then then it got the best of me, and I walked in, and I'm hearing this voice on the machine, and I pick it up and I say hello, and he says, "Herman, this is Kenny Loggins," and I'm like, literally, no joke, I'm saying, "Get the fuck out of here! This is not Kenny Loggins."
Sure, right.
Nah, this is not right, Kenny Loggins. Yeah. He said, no, it's Kenny Loggins, And he says, "I'm interested in having you audition for my band." And I went, well, okay. And he says, "I'm going to pop in. I'm going to send you or message you a cassette of the audition tunes." And I said, okay, gave him my address. I get the tunes, and on both sides of the cassette, there's nothing. There's silence. From the beginning to the end, there's nothing on those cassettes or on that cassette. Now, the thing is, I wasn't too worried because the band that I played in Houston, the Scott Gertner Band, we played every tune off of that Kenny Loggins Alive record that was recorded at the Santa Barbara Bowl. And we knew every tune. We did every tune. So sure enough, the tunes that we were auditioning were tunes from that.
There you go.
So I walk in, I nail the tunes. He says, "When can you start rehearsal?" So unfortunately, the first 2 days of rehearsals interfered with the last 2 dates with Kirk Whalum in New York. So I turned them down. I said no. And by the time I got back home, there was a phone call from Kenny. And I said no once again. So that's twice I said no to Kenny. Next morning, 8 a.m., "Herman." And I'm saying, "Hello?" He said, "Did I wake you?" And I'm like, "Of course not." He says, "Are you sure you can't do this?" And I turned him down a third time.
Wow.
Only because, I'm young, and, I don't want to interfere with Kirk Whalem's thing,
Right, sure.
Now, of course, later that day, I'm getting phone calls from Kirk's management where all the other dates are like slowly dropping out. And really all we have is that New York date. And then with the mail coming in, I got the bills coming in. And, and so thankfully, Kenny calls again. And he says, "Herman, just call my manager. Call my manager and talk money." And it was one of those things where I got in. I mean, my floor level was, I was making as much money as the guys that were there. Although I was, I had never played a rock gig before. All of my stuff is all the jazz and the pop jazz stuff.
But you knew the tunes, you knew the sound, you loved his music already.
The tunes,
yeah,
loved his music, and and I was really more of a Loggins and Messina fan than I was a Loggins fan. Because I love that kind of folky country rock kind of thing.
Yeah.
But anyways.
But you also had worked with Kirk and Bob James, and Bob James produced that "Celebrate Me Home" record, and I mean, there's a lot of common ground there, right? So
a lot of common ground, a lot of it.
Well,
I was Kenny's drummer. I was Kenny's drummer for about 10 years. Yeah.
That's a great story. It reminds me of Dr. James Polk, whom you know, right? The great B3 player from Austin, and we play together every Monday with the great soul jazz group Church on Monday. And
I love it.
He tells the story of Ray Charles hiring him at the end of, I think, 79, 80, right around there, 78, 79. And that Ray called him up and asked him to join the band as the musical director and pianist, right, and then B3 player when Ray came out. And he turned him down, and because he said, we didn't turn him down, but he said, because Ray said, "I need you to be in New York this Friday or something." And he said, "I can't do that. I've got this I've got this hotel gig, you know, and this guy's counting on me to play piano in his lounge, and he said, I got to give him a 2 weeks notice. I just don't feel right. And he said there was a, you know, dead silence on the phone, and he thought, well, I just blew that gig, you know. And then he said, Ray came back and said, well, you know, I respect that. I respect that. He said, so there'll be a plane ticket for you, and, you know, you can be here on such and such a date. So he still hired him, you know.
Wow, that's great.
But, you know, you did, you were trying to do what was right by Kirk, and I know how much you would have loved to have had a gig like that, but at the same time, that's a beautiful story because you stay true to who you are and to those that count on you, and you can't lose out by being that way, right?
Right.
That's a message. Of course. That's a message the world needs right now.
Well, the thing that was funny, you know, I would call Kirk and kind of talk to him, and basically I was wanting one of them to say it was okay for me to do. You know, I wanted Kirk to say that. So finally, I had to say to Kirk, "Man, I got to give you notice. I'm going to have to send a sub to this gig." You know, and I sent a great sub, and I want to say it kind of sort of dampened the relationship with Kirk and I. But you know what? It worked itself out. It was okay.
I'm sure it did. Okay. Yeah, it was Kirk. Yeah. You know, another great performer and wonderful musician, great dude, and very. I always thought of him like an entrepreneur, you know, and in a musician sense, because he could see beyond where so many people around him could see, and I'm sure that remains true about him. So you know. He's a hard charging professional guy, but I can't imagine that he would have been somebody that wouldn't have gotten over that, and because he was the one that gave Kenny your name, or Kenny's manager your name in the first place, right? So
yeah. So it was all good.
Yeah, that's cool. Now there's another tune on the record that you mentioned that Teresa sings on. Which one was that?
Oh, Hold On You.
Maybe we ought to play that one. What do you think?
It's cut number 2. And this tune was sort of an afterthought, but it shows my, you know, I'm not going to say countryside, but it's sort of a grassrootsy kind of a tune. And literally, with it being the last tune recorded and with it being an afterthought, I literally had a kick, snare, and hi-hat.
That's it.
And that's it. You know, and I said, put some mics around this. I have a groove. I have an idea, and that was the song. You know, and I kind of built it all from that. And
I love that.
And then called Teresa.
That's a good metaphor. I was going to say that you playing kick, snare, and hi hat is a good representation of the core of what Herman Matthews is to so many people. That you can do all you need to do with a kick, snare, and a hi-hat.
Well, I never will forget, you know, the high school that I went to. I went to the high school for the performing and visual arts in Houston. The second school built after performing arts in New York. Fame, that whole thing. And Billy Cobham was a guest. And you know, we're asking all the questions about the big kid and the whole thing. And he just said, you know what? You should be able to play a gig with a kick, snare, hi-hat. You should be able to play a gig with that. And I never forgot that. I've forgotten that. So
that's great.
So basically, that's that. Well, you know,
I've played numerous gigs with a kick, snare, and hi hat, or even a kick and a snare, or sometimes a kick and a hi hat. Just mostly because I forget stuff. You know. So,
I understand.
I've played gigs without sticks. I've played with a coat hanger one time that I broke in half. It wasn't pretty. I hope no one recorded that. But
I'm sure it was musical, though. It was very musical. I'm sure it was.
You know, Alejandro Escovedo, who I've had the great pleasure of playing with numerous times over the last 4 or 5 years. He taught me a lot about laying off the cymbals too, you know, and just staying down and playing and not overwhelming the top end of the frequency range. And
yes.
And there were some times when he would go, you know, you don't really even need any cymbals on this date. Just kick, snare, hi-hat, and toms. He loves the toms, you know.
Wow.
But there's something to be said for pulling back severely and then gradually adding those things back in, I think, you know.
Well, the reason why I play now with such big cymbals, I play with big, thin, and dark cymbals. And so, my main crash is a 22-inch.
Wow.
And then I play a 24-inch ride, a 21-inch crash, and a 24-inch China. That's on the touring kit. But on the kit just locally, I play that 24-inch ride, basically. If I do need a crash, I'll play that 22-inch. On Timothy's gig, I play a 24-inch crash and a 26-inch ride. And what it is, with them being dark and thin, they're out of the range of the vocals. So you can still hear the meat. Yeah, right. You can still hear the meat of it, but it's not so much this big atomic crash that you hear from a 24-inch. You just hear sort of a feathery kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And it just works beautifully.
I hear where you're coming from. I love that. I love that you just shared what it is you play, because I've wondered what it is you play, and I know they're large, and because you use big drums too, and that's something I realize is coming from a jazz tradition, jazz universe, or jazz influenced universe. There's a lot of smaller drum sizes and smaller cymbals and stuff, and you can make small drums sound big sometimes, depending on how you record them. But
dig this though, man. Art Blakey played big cymbals.
Yeah.
When I would hear swing and swag, and he would swing the shit out of it. And he played big cymbals. But anyways, okay.
Yeah. No, but that's good. And I've found myself gravitating in that way too. It's like I need this cymbal needs 2 or 3 more inches of diameter to get to the place where my ear wants to hear it. And I played so many high and brittle cymbals over the years that, it's really done some damage to my ears too. So there's a lot of good to be said for very large cymbals,
there you go.
Ring lower. So let's play Hold On You and and dig on this tune with Teresa James as the vocalist and Herman on minimal kit here.
Well, she's on ad-lib vocals, but check it out.
Okay, cool.
My mama told me a thing or two. She said something's gonna have a hold on you. Everybody's got a point of view, son. Something's gonna have a hold on you. Hold on you, hold on you. Something's gonna have a hold on you. Hold on you, you. Well, something's gonna have a hold on you. There's gotta be a heaven, 'cause I know there's a hell. Something's gonna have a hold on you. Hold on you, hold on you. Something's gonna have a hold on you. Hold on you, hold on you. Something's gonna have a hold on you. Hold on you, hold on you. Something's gonna have a hold on you. Hold on you, hold on you. Something's gonna have a hold on you.
Oh yeah, that's nice. I see what you mean. She's just doing all the call and
Oh,
response
she's-
stuff, and
Putting all the sweetening on that, man.
woo, that's
She,
good.
she's incredible. And Karen Briggs is playing the fiddle on that, which which is pretty funny because Karen Briggs is a world class violinist, a virtuoso. I mean, she's amazing. And literally, the first few takes, she came in sounding like Eddie Van Halen on steroids. And I was like, no, wait, let's listen to the track. And so, we really had to dumb herself down to the track. So, but she was amazing, and this is the one. There's a couple of things. I guess I should mention this. Brian Monroney, who was the MD for Tom Jones when I was in that band, I always was amazed at his guitar playing. And on this track, literally, I got to read this. He played a Baby Taylor slide, a Mexican telly, Neptune baritone, a full tone Clyde deluxe wah wah, a super tone, what does I say, pawn shop banjo with the price tag still on it. And I mean, he played all of those guitars to make this track happen. And then my favorite thing, I did all this and did not have a bass part on it. And Charlie Drayton, the drummer, you know who he is, right?
Yeah.
Who turned out to be sort of, my big brother and the one guy who can talk me off the ledge when I think that this whole music business is just shit. I sent the track to him, and he played one of the most incredible bass lines on it that I would never had thought anyone could play. And it was just, he was playing in the cracks and playing in the spaces and kind of responding off the lead vocal. It turned out being one of my favorite things on the song. So
Yeah.
So anyway,
it's really cool. He's behaving in a way kind of like Teresa is, right? I mean, he's responding to things, and it's very
right.
I love that because that way the guitar and the drums are really holding down the groove. I mean, all the strings, right? All the string players and the drummer are holding down the groove, and everybody else is floating around it.
Well, if you notice, it's a very busy track.
It's a lot of conversation. It's like
right. No one's getting in the way.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I love it. By the way, I didn't think to do this earlier, but I put on the screen paypal.me/Herman Matthews. That is Herman's virtual tip bucket. And when I do these SLRadio things, which it's not really radio, it's I'm streaming to YouTube and Facebook. And I started this maybe 3 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. Just one night I was missing people and missing good music. And I came on and just started playing some tunes. I don't think you knew about it, Herman, but I came on and I was listening to some recordings that I had done at the Elephant Room downtown in Austin a few years ago with Chris Marsh and Mitch Watkins and myself, just this trio we had.
Yeah.
And I sang on a few tunes with that band, but we did a lot of originals, and then we did some covers with our own little thing. And I recorded many weeks of us playing, and I dug up some of those and was just sharing them with people and just doing kind of the late night radio thing, you know. And people enjoyed it. Man. And then I asked a friend to come on here. I've had maybe 5 or 6 that have had guests, and you after I did one with a guest and had so much fun with trombone player Paul McKee, who used to play with Woody Herman. Okay. I just started making a list of people I wanted to have on, and you were way up that list. I'm telling you.
Oh,
got to get
man,
Herman on
so
here, man. Well,
thank you, brother.
I just there's so much we could talk about. We'll have to do another one sometime, and I don't want to keep you any longer because I know you've got to take a breather before you got a family call coming up a little bit later. So I got to free up.
I got a family call in an hour, and in that hour I have to make dinner.
Oh my gosh.
For my wife, you know.
Yeah.
Which I love to cook.
Yes. You gonna make some pie?
I have. Yeah, later on. I have no idea what I'm going to make for dinner, but I'm going to try and do it within an hour. So, anyways.
Well, I want to thank you again for coming on. It's been a great pleasure just to hang out and to hear some stories and see your beautiful face and hear your beautiful tunes.
Thank you. Man. Thank you for having me. What you're doing is an amazing thing. I can't wait to go back and hear, some of the stuff with Passenger. And I miss you. I love you. And once again, just thank you.
You're so welcome. I miss you and love you too. Speaking of that too, I'll let you know, but Mitch and I were talking, and he's going to come on soon, and we're going to dig up all of those never released tapes of the Mitch Watkins group from 83, 84. Some of that stuff you and I used to listen to together, and when I was trying to learn how to do all that stuff, and those are from fun times. So that'll be a good show.
Indeed.
But anyway, love to the family, love to anybody and everybody that is close to you, and safety, and healing and peace.
Thank you, brother.
You bet. Take care, my friend.